Misleadingly Quirkless, The Fool's Gold Act. Written by MothMothhMothh. Read by Cherry XD. Summary. It turns out that quirkless people are a lot more common than the world would like to think, especially in heroics. Hiding in plain sight was always the best way to do things, Midoriya supposed. AKA, heroes pretend to have quirks, more or less deliberately, but Midoriya's got them all figured out. Chapter 1. It wasn't until he was 13 years old that Midoriya realized there was more people in the public eye that were quirkless than most people thought. He could say he was surprised, but with how quirkless people were treated nowadays, especially in the heroic side of things. The first hero he discovered that lacked a quirk was Midnight. In all honesty, Midnight didn't really seem to mislead people in the beginning. She really thought that the gas dispensers around her wrist were noticeable enough for people to identify that they were a support item. But it wasn't until her 5th arrest that she realized they all thought it was her quirk, the quirk she didn't have. She laughed and decided to go along with it, for shits and giggles. 12 years later, and nobody had figured it out. Not until a hyperactive teenager with far too much free time. Nimrai was just trying to get home when she encountered the child. He ran out in front of her with a notebook tucked under one arm and a pen held tight in the other hand. Wait, Miss Midnight-san, he cried, hand outstretched. She shrugged. It was just one kid. Can't be that much trouble, right? Sure. She crouched down to the teenager's level. What's up, kiddo? I've been analyzing your fighting and I wanted to ask you something. It won't take long, I promise. Nimari mentally prepared for any inappropriate questions that may have been asked and planned out responsible answers. Are you actually quirkless or do you just hide your actual quirk? His eyes were wide, brimming with innocence, and honestly, Nimrai nearly lost her balance with surprise. But pardon? She choked out, begging to have been misheard. Well, all the kids at school say that I can't be a hero because I don't have a quirk, but I noticed that your original bracelets were bulkier, and that's where your mist comes from. He stopped to take a breath. Then I noticed that everybody that's been close to you has smelled a really sweet scent, which wouldn't have made sense if it was your quirk. So it only really makes sense if you wear really heavy perfume. Nimrai blinked. Never in her 30 years of life. And if it wasn't part of your quirk, logically, neither would the anesthetic part. And if I had to guess, I'd say it was sevoflurane. Am I right? His personality 180'd, from confidence to timid as he shifted his feet anxiously. Nimrai gasped wordlessly, brain frozen as she attempted to respond. Kid, that's spot on. You're a damn genius, shorty. She gave him a wide grin. I can't wait to teach you at UA, kiddo. She ruffled his hair, stood up and walked off, successfully hiding the shake in her step. She hoped she wasn't around when Nezu discovered him. When Midoriya first saw Hawks, he knew something was a little bit sketchy. Of course, he was right. Kenko was perfectly fine with his quirklessness. His parents, on the other hand, less so. They chucked him away the second they found out he wasn't special, and the Hero Commission had picked him up. They saw him as expendable at first, trained him to die the moment they decided to use him as a test subject for the first prototype of mechanical wings. This was the first time he'd ever been attached to an object in his life. The red shine awakened something in him, his favourite colour in the form of freedom. From then on, he was referred to as Hawks. Hawks whistled, kicking a rock lazily as he waltzed across the rooftop. His tune faded to silence when he caught sight of a teenager banging on the rooftop access door desperately. He froze and allowed his wings to unfold, gliding to the lower roof with practiced ease. What you doing, kid? He drawled, kicking his feet playfully. The teenager, most likely in middle school, froze, slowly turning his face towards the winged hero. Hawks? He stammered, his eyes widening in surprise. He grinned widely. The one and only. The student gasped, snapping out of it, to grab a tattered notebook from inside of his blazer, and a pen already in his other hand. I've been meaning to ask you something. It will only take a second. If you say yes, of course. I'm perfectly understand if you don't want to. I'm just some kid you don't even know, and... Hawks cut him off. Go for it, kiddo. Ask away. The boy hesitated for a mere second before opening his mouth to speak. I noticed a while ago that you only work alone, and I was wondering if it was because you're actually quirkless. Hawks blinked. Once. Twice. In my mind, it makes sense because the Hero Commission really isn't known for being progressive, so they probably wouldn't want to waste backup on you due to their bigotry. I'm really, really sorry if you're not quirkless, but your rings reflect too much light to actually be feathers, so that means they're a support item. He paused, inhaled deeply, and continued. And, all the kids in my school say that the support items are useless, that the quirk is what matters, but if you're quirkless, that means I could be a hero, right? Hawks looked into the Viridian irises, which at some point in the least 5 minutes had transformed into puppy dog eyes because he couldn't say no to that face like that. He smiled and replied honestly, "Of course you can, kiddo. Let's get you to a safer level right now, though." Without any warning, Hawks picked up the teenager and circled the building, slowly declining in height until Midoriya's feet grazed the bottom. He hovered for a second before giving the student a wide grin. "See you around, kiddo," he called over his shoulder as he flew away. Midoriya stood there, mouth open, processing what had just happened for a second or two, before clicking his pen frantically, scrawling what he just learnt about the hero in his notebook, ignoring the way the nib dragged on the wet paper, the lump in his throat fading as the autograph of All Might still decorated the page before. Chapter 2. Midoriya harasses a poor, good Samaritan, beats the shit out of a would-be robber, and accidentally compliments Miriko's thighs to her face. He's not having a swagtastic time. Effin' chat. From the second he laid eyes on Snipe, Midoriya knew he was quirkless. The red shoes were the first indicator, followed by the slight inaccuracy in most of his shots, unnoticed to most. Then there was the way he acted. The man despised the media in a way that reminded Izuku of a cat that disliked citrus. He avoided them, like a plague that cloaked himself in an aura of mystery. Snipe was a busy man. On top of his hero work, he had to train at every given opportunity to give the illusion of a quirk. Exhaustion was something he was well acquainted with. He sat on the beach, heavily letting out a long, slow exhale. A plastic bag was plopped next to him, a week's worth of food filling it, ready to donate to the locals that needed it. It was moments like this, he mused as nobody gave him a single glance. He was grateful he'd thought to put a mask on his costume. He'd sat there, just watching the world go around, for half an hour before the child came along. He narrowed his eyes when he caught sight of the teenager at first. The student stared right back, grinning widely. He first thought the local one to those in the field of heroics. What if the child was going to try to recruit him for some villainous organization? He groaned and prepared for the worst. The kid walked up to his bench and took a seat right next to him. He turned to the hero, green eyes wide and hopeful. "Snipe, right?" he asked, voice shaking. The hero raised his eyebrow. "Who's asking?" The teenager's eyes lit up and a wide smile graced his face. I've been looking for certain heroes, and I'm pretty sure you fit the kind of hero I'm looking for." "And what kind is that?" Snipe asked curiously. The boy shuffled his feet in anxiety before speaking again. You're quirkless, right?" He looked at Snipe, eyes wide and pleading in the way that reminded the hero of the stray cats outside his apartment that begged for food every time he passed. "What's it to you, kiddo?" "Well, I've asked some heroes similar questions, but do you think someone like me could become a hero with enough practice? I know you use homing bullets too, but your practice is what makes you the hero you are today." Snipe leaned back. He hadn't been expecting the kid to ask him like that. He was about to question what he meant by someone like him, before he caught sight of the child's shoes, a mirror image of his own. "Sure, kiddo. What kind of weapons are you looking into?" The student's smile transformed into a wide and slightly terrifying grin. "Knives, sir." Snipe nodded thoughtfully in response. "Good choice, kid. Say, if you're trying to become a hero, how about you try helping me giving out some of these food packets to the locals with me?" The student pulled out his phone, turned on his location and sent it to his mother with a message detailing where he was going, and who he was with. Smart kid, Snipe thought. "What's your name, kid?" "Midoriya, sir. Midoriya Izuku." Mirko hated children. Children, babies, teenagers. She despised babies for their noise levels, children for their insensitive and incomplete questions, and teenagers because far too many were sexist assholes or perverts. Unfortunately, since choosing her occupation as a hero, she encountered many, many children. If she could go back in time, she'd axe-kick herself for thinking about being a hero, until she met the singular exception. Midoriya didn't mean to get semi-held hostage. He promised. He only wanted some milk, which was understandable considering with his replacement for water, which he refused the clear liquid and its disgusting taste. And he was pretty fucking thirsty. It was just his luck that the shop he entered was invaded by a criminal less than a minute after he got through the door. Life was a bitch, and he was a dog toy. The criminal, a man in his late 50s, had no noticeable weapons and no quirk activated. Midoriya judged him heavily. "Put all of the money in the bag or I will blow this place to next year," he hissed, holding his coat as if there was a hidden weapon inside. After making sure the cashier was in no sense of being injured, he picked up a tin can of sweet corn and hurled it at the man's head with all of his strength, wincing in semi-sympathy when the loud clunk sound rang out as it made contact with the criminal's head. Looking frantically, Midoriya grabbed the first roll of duct tape he saw, an unfortunate shade of neon green, and began restraining the man. Once he finished, and after he made sure the attempted robber was in a recovery position, he stood up. Could you call the police, please? I'm really sorry, I left my phone at home." The cashier shook their head. "Sorry, kid. I used the silent alarm to notify the heroes. They should be here any second." "You're a vigilante. You should scram now." A vigilante!" he squeaked, dropping the remains of the duct tape he had clutched in his hand. Before the cashier could clarify, the door was kicked open and a hero crept in, looking everywhere they could before realizing the criminal had been sent to deal with and was on the floor and unable to move. "Aw, man," she sulked, putting her hands on her hips and glaring sternly at the greenette. "You," she hissed, "you did this." Midoriya gulped. "Hey, Mirko, he didn't use his quirk if that's what you're worried about," the cashier spoke up. Just chuck some sweet corn at him and he knocked out. Mirko's scowl didn't lessen. "Alright, Squirt, what's your deal?" "But what do you mean?" "You got that look in your eyes, you want to ask me something. Spit it out." Midoriya appreciated her straightforwardness, but also felt highly threatened and wished to reduce into a shell and live out his long lifetime dreams of becoming a turtle. Midoriya tried to figure out how to phrase his question. "You're quirkless, aren't you?" It wasn't a question, it was a cold, hard statement. "So what, you were bigger or something?" Her hackles raised and muscles tensed. No, I'm just wondering why you decided to go with a rabbit." She raised an eyebrow. "It's just that rabbits are considered weak and fluffy, and there are so many animals you could have gone with theme-wise, and..." Mirko cut him off. "I like rabbits. You got a problem with that, Squirt?" "Of course not. Would I be right if I was to say you choose the rabbit theme to fake a quirk because of your legs?" It took Midoriya a second to realize how his question sounded. "Not like that, Cammy, not like that, I promise. I just meant that you most certainly exercise your legs the most, which makes sense because your legs are very useful. But rabbits are also known for their leg strength, which makes sense because..." The hero held a finger out to his lips. "Shut up. I get what you mean, and you're right. But don't tell anyone I don't have a quirk, and I'll punch you to America. Got it?" She threatened, looking at the cashier too, who held up their hands in mock surrender. "I would never. Quirkless don't out quirkless, and I stand by that." Conviction drenched his voice, getting his point across pretty fucking well. "Maybe you're not so bad, Squirt, but next time I see you..." She narrowed her eyes. "Watch your shins, 'cause you might not have them anymore." Midoriya smiled. That went pretty well, he thought. The cashier let out a deep breath. Holy fuck, she could have killed me and I'd thank her. That was so attractive. Hello, Cherry XD here, and I hope that you enjoyed this podfic. This one is being recorded in segments, I'm not gonna lie. I recorded 2 chapters at the current time, and I'm gonna record the last 3 another day. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed. This podfic is one of my favourites because I just found this hilarious. And you guys have no idea how many takes I've taken to record this. But I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you guys are having a good day. Remember to take care of yourselves. And I will see you later. Goodbye.